Next comes in situ conservation is sacred forests and lakes. Sacred forest and lakes, they are the patches around a place of worship. These are held in high esteem by tribal communities, state or central government. These are the most undisturbed forests, which are often surrounded by degraded landscapes. Such sacred groves are found in several states of India like Meghalaya, Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Kerala. Tribals have built temples in such patches. For example, Deodar forest in Kumaon region there and Jantias and Khasias in Meghalaya. They have these tribes, they have made their temples in the forest, sacred forest, and these tribes do not allow to cut even a single branch of tree in these sacred forests. That is why many rare and endemic species they are seen to flourish here. Another example is of Bishnois of Rajasthan, which protect Khejri and Tulsi religiously. Some water bodies are also held in many places. And example of a sacred lake is Khechio Polari in Sikkim. Next comes the ex situ conservation. Ex situ conservation strategies they include botanical gardens, zoo, conservation stands, gene culture, pollen culture, seed culture, seedling culture, tissue culture, and DNA banks. Seed gene banks they are the easiest way to store the germ plasm of wild cultivated plants at low temperature in cold storms. Prevention of genetic resources is carried out in field gene banks under normal growing conditions. Next is cryopreservation or in vitro conservation. For conserving vegetatively propagated crops like potato, cryopreservation is very useful. That is, storage in liquid nitrogen at a temperature of minus 196 degrees Celsius. Cryopreservation is storage of material at ultra low temperature either by rapid cooling or by gradual cooling and then simultaneous dehydration at low temperature for tissue culture. Means cryopreservation, it can be done either by rapid cooling of the substance to be stored and it is used for storing seeds, or by gradually cooling and then taking out all the water from it by gradual cooling and side by side by dehydrating at low temperature, and it is used for tissue culture. The material can be stored for a long period of time in compact and low maintenance refrigeration units in cryopreservation. Cryopreservation techniques are useful for preserving vegetatively propagated crops, seeds of plants, and sperms, eggs, cells, and tissues of animals. Next is the botanical gardens. Conservation of biological diversity in botanical garden is already in practice. There are more than 1500 botanical gardens all over the world which contain more than 80,000 species. Zoo, these there are more than 800 professionally managed zoos around the world and which have about 3000 species of mammals, birds, reptiles and amphibians. Many zoos have well developed captive breeding programs also. Plants and animals conserved in botanical gardens, zoo, and aquaria. They can be used to restore degraded lands, introduce species into wild, reintroduce species into wild, and restock the depleted population. Next comes the hotspots of biodiversity. Biodiversity is not uniformly distributed on Earth. Certain regions, they are mega diversity zones where very large number of species are found. And those regions of where we can found very large number of species of plants and animals, those regions are called hotspots of biodiversity. India, which has 2.4% of land area of the world, and it inhabits 8% of species of global diversity. Hotspots are those regions of biodiversity which have been declared sensitive due to direct or indirect influence of human activities. These places or areas, they have rich endemic fauna and flora, and these are most threatened habitats, and many of them have been reduced to 10% of their original vegetation. Hotspots regions are under constant threat of species extinction and habitat destruction. The concept of hotspot was developed by Norman Meyer in 1998 to designate priority areas for in situ conservation. The key criteria for determining hotspots are the number of endemic species which are found nowhere else, and the degree of threat in terms of habitat loss. There are 25 hotspots for conservation of biodiversity worldwide. For example, tropical Andes, Caribbean, Brazil Atlantic forest, South Central China, Western Ghat in Sri Lanka, Southwest Australia, New Zealand, Central Chile, etc. And these hotspots together, they cover 1.4% of Earth's land area. Tropical forest, and they appear in 15 hotspots. Mediterranean type zone, it includes 5 hotspots, and islands in there are 9 hotspots of biodiversity. Among 25 hotspots of the world, 2 are in India, and these are Western Ghats and Eastern Himalayas. 2 hotspots of biodiversity in India are Western Ghats and Eastern Himalayas.